Did nomadic women go fight in wars? Hey guys, this is Scholar General Mojian. Today we're going to be talking about nomadic women fighting in wars. And, there's been quite a few videos on the internet about, did women in medieval times actually fight in battles? And, were there warrior women? Was that a thing? Was it common? And this is actually something that I feel uniquely qualified to talk about because my master's thesis was actually about particular warrior women during the Liao Dynasty in northern China. So for this video, I'm holding the LK Chen Double Dragon Sui Dao, and that's because, for one, the sword's awesome, and I'm going to make a video on it soon, so you guys should be on the lookout for that. In addition to that, during the Liao Dynasty, swords somewhat like this were fairly common. So let's get right down to business. Did women from nomadic societies participate in warfare more frequently than women from sedentary societies? Generally speaking, the answer is kind of yes, but it's really not that simple. There's a lot of details. Across most of human history, societies have given males and females different roles. Like in medieval Europe, women were primarily in charge of taking care of, textile production in the home and stuff like that. And that was true for most of Asia as well. But whenever we get out into the steppe, things start to change a little bit. One thing that's true is that nomadic societies, just like other societies, did give separate roles for men and women. But there's a key distinction here in that the roles that women were given in nomadic societies had quite a bit more freedom than roles that women were given in other societies. I know that as soon as I mention China and warrior women, people are instantly going to think of Mulan. And it's true that Mulan was probably a real person who did go fight in war. But the fact is that she kind of proves what I'm saying rather than negates it, because she actually was probably a nomad or maybe semi-nomadic or something, because the dynasty that she's part of, the Wei, they actually were ruled by nomadic people. And the fact is that the original poem that describes the story of Mulan, it actually doesn't say, well, it says both, but it says it's the Emperor of China, but at a different point it calls him the Khan or Kagan, which is a nomadic title. So he's not completely the same as other Chinese emperors from history. So in pre-modern nomadic societies, you would have like small communities living together, and they would have thousands of animals. You can't afford to keep anybody cooped up inside when there's that much work to do. So the men and the women all go out to work together, but they would sometimes regulate, like there's accounts of the Mongols where men will take care of horses, women will take care of the sheep and the goats. But there is distinctions, but the fact is that the roles that they're doing are more similar than in other societies. Another thing is that in nomadic societies, everyone learns to ride a horse. Everyone is, super good at riding a horse. They sometimes learn to ride horses before they know how to walk. And in other societies, women were sometimes kept from doing things like that, especially in public. Besides being able to ride a horse, women in nomadic societies would also frequently, learn archery as a child, because whenever you're in a nomad, little kids, what are they going to do? You can play little games with like ankle bones like they do, but you can also learn to shoot a bow, and pretty much everybody could learn it if they wanted to. So lots of women learned how to shoot. They didn't always really go out on hunt, and they didn't go to warfare whenever they grew up, but they were able to shoot, and that's important. And sometimes we do have accounts where they would go out and hunt with the males, and there's an imperial account of a high-ranking Liao or Khitan woman who goes out and kills a bear on a hunt, and that's something that you don't always see from other societies. Now, it is true that in nomadic societies, the people who would go out and do most of the very close physical fighting would be males. But part of that is because the home, it's not really a home, the tent, the ger or the yurt, wouldn't really take care of itself without the woman being there. And women took a super active role in, they could control where they wanted their house to move. So they were in charge of moving the house. The wives of the Khans or the Khagans also had direct control over the bodyguard force. They were in command of the bodyguard force that guarded the home. So they already have access to troops of their own to guard the home, and they also get to control exactly where the home goes. And in nomadic armies, moving the tents around is basically your logistical backbone that you can fall back on if you need to. So they would follow the armies around. The normal thing for women to do in these societies was to follow men's armies around and supply them with logistics, and also, make sure the home was kept safe. I should also mention that on the steppe, in nomadic tradition, wives would serve as super important military advisors to their husbands, and they were basically an important, crucial part of the war room planning. And we have documents where emperors or khans would use their wife's plan to make a political or a military move, and find success doing that. So it was pretty standard for high-ranking nomadic women to have very good insight onto political maneuvering as well as military formations in combat. It can be dangerous to say things like what's the normal thing for somebody to do, but what I'm saying here is that generally speaking, from the sources that we see, women usually performed duties in this kind of way. However, because the usual thing that women did, they could already ride horses, many of them could already shoot a bow, many of them already knew about military affairs, and they already had some access to troops of their own with the bodyguards of the tents in the community. Therefore, those kind of four things make it where in certain situations women could really easily become warriors just like men, because they had all the necessary training to do so. And that's the really big difference between sedentary women and nomadic women. It's not that they will automatically, by default, being put out on the front lines. It's the fact that they already had all the skills they needed to go out on the front lines. And that's part of the argument that I made in my thesis, where Liao empresses like Yingtian and Chengtian were able to, rely on their skills that they learned with their nomadic heritage and capitalize on that when they saw the opportunity, and therefore, take control of armies, take control of the state, and find great success at it. And we do have women. It's important to note that we do have women from sedentary societies who are also able to go out and fight, like Joan of Arc is an example, or Yang Miaozhen is another example. So there's women from non-nomadic places where they are able to go fight, but it's a little bit rarer, and I would argue that that's because where they have to find a place where they can learn skills that will be useful in war. The roles of both men and women did not directly equip them for warfare. There's a reason why the Han Dynasty had to conscript soldiers, because they had a bunch of farmers, and farmers don't really know how to fight in a war. So they have to take those farmers, train them for a year, and then deploy them for a year. That was their policy. But the nomads, they just went hunting all the time, and the way they hunted translated directly into warfare. So, and women were almost the same. So the whole society on itself is mobilized and trained as soldiers, and that's why the Mongols and other nomadic populations, they're really tiny amounts of people, but they're all really, really good soldiers, and that's part of what makes them, punch above their weight class, so to speak, in terms of historical significance. Alright everybody, thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe if you want to see more, and as always, don't forget to stay sharp.